For a lot of us, if we see a bee, we run. But did you know bees are actually our friends? In fact, they're very important to our environment as well. And joining us now to talk more about this, Brian Peterson. He is the founder of Bees and the D. It's always so fun to have you on the show with us. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me back. It's great to be here.
It is such an education because I was stung by a bee for the first time about 5 years ago. And I was screaming like crazy. My neighbors ran out and, put like garlic on me. I didn't know you could put garlic on a bee sting. But we forget bees are really important to the environment, and honeybees in particular. Tell us why they're so important.
So the first of all, everybody always thinks of stings, and a lot of times that sting could have been a bee, but it also could have been a wasp or a hornet, which tend to be a little bit more aggressive, if you will. But the reaction is pretty similar. But why bees are so important, and not just honeybees, all of our native bees, as there's upwards of 4,000 different bees just in Michigan, they are the ones that are going out and pollinating a lot of different foods that we eat. And so if you enjoy a variety of foods, a diversity of foods, then you should be thankful for bees.
Brian, your background is you're actually a math and science teacher. How did you cross over into the bee world?
So yeah, I'm actually in my classroom right now. I teach remotely currently, and my kids are off at gym class remotely right now during this time. So this time slot worked perfectly. Actually, the crossover was related to education, and that's why I even started the nonprofit. It was a wonderful group. The Women's Garden Club of Rochester sponsored me to take a beekeeping course up on Beaver Island. It was a 2-week course through Oakland University, and I just caught the bug, as I tell people, and really fell in love with beekeeping. And then when I moved to the city, I wasn't living in the city yet. The bees were really there for me at some difficult times. And so I was like, well, now I'm reading about the bees having a difficult time. I wanted to start the nonprofit to help educate people and to help our bee populations, and just never expected the incredible response that we have gotten. So, yeah, it is related right to education.
So how have you formed and crossed over the two entities, the education part with the, helping the bee population as well?
That's what's been really fun about it, because we have partnered up with many different companies and now even schools, but it is a tough sell because of what you talked about at the beginning. People because they sting, and so that can be a little scary for school districts. But I am at a few schools, and especially higher education. So I'm at Oakland University, at U of D. And so we've gotten to do a lot of really cool educational things. And actually at U of D, we are going to start studying the honey samples from throughout the city, because you can analyze to see where the bees are foraging, in what trace amounts of pollen are in that honey. I've gotten to do a lot of really cool education things. It's interesting because with COVID, I used to do a lot of in-person workshops, training people to be beekeepers, learning more about our pollinators. But we've had to switch to remote, much like most people have. But it's actually opened up the doors. I've been able to present at libraries all across the nation, which I probably would have never done if the COVID didn't happen. So there's a little silver lining there, getting to educate, all the way down to Texas, California, but of course, mainly here in Michigan.
So is there a difference between bees in Michigan versus bees in other parts of the country?
Great question. So just so you know, I already said that 4,000 different species in Michigan. Worldwide, there's about 20,000 bees. But honeybees are their own, the Apis mellifera, if you want to get real scientific, that's the scientific term. But there are different breeds of honeybees. Sometimes you hear about the African ones more in the South, but there's German, there's Italian. But for the most part, a honeybee is a honeybee. But being in different climates, they react differently or behave differently. So that's kind of an intriguing thing about all nature, you know, how they adapt to their climate.
Brian Peterson with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. He's the founder of Bees in the D. How do you pick your locations as to where you're putting your beehives?
Great question. So we actually use a software called Hive Tracks, and that puts on the map where our beehives are, and then it puts the rings around where those hives are that show us up to a 5-mile radius, because bees will go far from their hives to forage. Usually they stay within 3 though. So when we look at the map, we're trying to fill in the gaps where we can have a little bit of a crossover. We call it the honeybee highway, just because they're very important to pollinating people's gardens, our trees. And so we kind of look at that. We want to make sure it's best for everybody. So if it's in an area where we feel like it might not be the best, where it's a very dense area, although we're right in the city, because honeybees really don't want much to do with humans. They're too busy. You hear the expression busy as a bee doing their own thing. But we also don't want to oversaturate how many hives there are in a location. Plus, there's a lot of hobbyist beekeepers as well. So that's one way we look at it. But we also like to look at the satellite to make sure there's water nearby, because water is very important. And looking for green spaces so that they have plenty of areas to forage.
So how did you pick the location, like in Detroit? Because you wouldn't think Detroit, when you hear Detroit, the first thing you think of, not bees. So
Right.
How have you been able to kind of bridge that gap and become so successful at it as well?
Well, here's something that I'm a lifelong learner. I'm learning stuff all the time. And what's the beauty with Bees and the D's, we span across 5 counties in Southeast Michigan now. We're in rural areas like at Blake's Farms, and we're in suburban areas like Berkeley, West Bloomfield, and then we're mainly in the city, you know, in Detroit. And reading on studies and talking with other bee companies like Best Bees and the Honeybee Conservancy, studies have been done, and they realize that honeybees actually are more productive in an urban area. And I've seen it. Our beehives in the city are actually our strongest hives, produce the most honey. And they believe that it's due to diversity of plants. And you'd think it'd be the opposite. But there's a lot of diversity of plants in cities, especially Detroit, because there's so many vacant lots in so many areas that are green. And Detroit is a tree city, USA. So there's a lot of trees which are beneficial to bees, because all trees do bloom. We usually just think of the flowering trees, but maples, oaks, those helicopters or those acorns start out as a flower. So that's an important food source for our bees. So it is crazy that our city bees are just flourishing and doing amazing.
And I'm a little bit of a naysayer, because when you say vacant lots in Detroit, for me, those vacant lots too often were used as illegal dumping grounds. When they are being used as such, does that hinder what you're trying to do and the bees and their pollination and them making the honey?
Maybe depending on what's dumped, but for the most part, people are just dumping litter of some sort, but weeds are still going to grow. Nature is crazy how it can flourish. And so a lot of those vacant lots, but the city has really done a fantastic job where there's a lot of programs where if there's a vacant lot adjacent to your property, you can actually get it for a very reasonable price. And a lot of people are doing that now and creating more green spaces and urban gardens. And so Detroit's becoming a real urban garden city, which then of course goes hand in hand with the pollinators. So I haven't seen it hindering it at all. If anything, these vacant lots have been a help for our pollinators, and not just honeybees. A lot of our native bees, the bumblebees and mason bees and leafcutter bees, have the numbers have been really increasing in a lot of the city areas, believe it or not.
Wow. And Bees in the D, it is a nonprofit, and it's a hard time to be a nonprofit. How are you guys doing, and how have you had to shift to try to do your fundraising during this time?
Yeah, it has been difficult. I really miss the face-to-face, the hive tours, the things like that, that just, it's going into a hive, nothing is like that. A lot of people tell me it's on their bucket list, and I missed, letting people see that a world like no other. But we have switched to virtual. We've done quite a few virtual hive tours through Yelp. We've done some virtual honey harvest. And then, like I said, I'm doing a lot of programs with libraries where I'm just trying to do the best that I can over a computer like we are right now, or a camera. But yes, it is difficult for the nonprofits. We didn't get to do our annual fundraiser, our big BBQ where we have an auction. But it's really forcing us, or force is kind of a strong word, but it's encouraging us to try to look at it through a different lens and get creative. And I will say that we're so fortunate. We have so many wonderful followers that many people have donated, and that really is what keeps us afloat. And it was a bumper honey crop year, and so our sales are really keeping us afloat as well, and making our lip balms, and we have some fun t-shirts. But for the most part, our honey, and then collaborations. We did a honey bourbon and a bourbon honey with Detroit City Distillery, Founders, and Eastern Market Brewery, and Dragon Mead. All have done some brews that have done really well, and that helps us as well. And also is putting some incredible ingredients into their recipes.
I love your enthusiasm for bees.
Once you get me talking, it's pretty dangerous.
Can you share with us more on that side of the house, the sales and what you're making with the honey from these beehives?
So for the most part, it's just raw honey. It's straight out of the hive, no processing. And that's a great thing because it has they call it a superfood. It helps with ailments. It's got so many properties in it that it's just mind-boggling to me that this little insect creates such a wonderful food for us. And so sometimes it crystallizes, it gets kind of solid. That's still good honey. If it crystallizes, it's in its raw form. You can bring it back to the liquid form by just putting a pot of water on the stove, bring it to a boil, turn it off, put the honey jar in there, and it will go back to a liquid. Or if it's in the solid, you can use it in the spread form, which is nice. But we also do, like I said, we had the partnership where this year we put 50 gallons of honey in a bourbon barrel at Detroit City Distillery, let it age for about 3 months, and it took on that bourbon flavor. So delicious, but we sold out of that in 2 days. And then they made a bourbon, which they sold out as well. We do it every year, and we sell out very quickly because it's a very unique thing. But we have a couple more brews that are coming up with Eastern Market Brewery and Founders that have the honey in it. Like I said, we make our own lip balms using the wax. So I have one right here. And this one is a vanilla chai. And we do a lot of partnerships. We just did a partnership with Motor City Candle Company where they made their first 100% beeswax candles. It's called the Detroit Beekeeper, and there's a few still available on their webpage. But that's what we love. We love to do partnerships. I actually have another call with an artist that would like to do some stuff with the wax. So that's what's fun. Detroit takes care of Detroit, all these grassroots efforts. It's really fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that even more so now coming out of this pandemic where people are joining together.
Oh, definitely.
So with that, what's next for Bees in the D?
Well, we are actually working with the land bank right now to acquire some lots. And we've been working with Studio Detroit that has designed the most incredible education center by upcycling some shipping containers. And we hope to do our fundraising, get the money that we need to create this education community center where people can go to learn more about the bees, but also have space where they can go to maybe have birthday parties. And we want to have lots of gardens. There's even talk of growing hops for some of our local breweries right there at our gardens. So we're hoping to get the fundraising going, but like we said, with the pandemic, it's kind of put things a little bit on hold. But we're continuing to expand. We are going to be at the International Wildlife Sanctuary that's down in Trenton. We're just expanding. It's unbelievable how many people, it's flattering how many people see our mission, sense, like you said, our enthusiasm, and are helping us along with that mission by hosting hives and events and different things like that.
So, have you been able to take advantage of any of these grants that have been offered to nonprofits during the pandemic?
Yes, we actually, one of our board members is a fantastic grant writer, and so they have helped out. And then we actually had some of the, like the hand sanitizers, things like that, that have been sent to us that then we can give out to others through our organization and help pair up to educate about, safety precautions. So yeah, some of them, but it's very competitive in the grant world too.
Oh yeah, we're hearing some of these stories where people have been online and then within 2 minutes, boom, the grants are all allotted, and
Yeah,
so it can be
yeah,
hard to get. Sorry, you can hear my dog barking.
I love it. Well, there's so many great worthy nonprofits and causes out there that it's great to see that there are companies and people that are offering these grants to help keep some of these nonprofits afloat.
Brian Peterson, again with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. He's the founder of Bees and the D. Brian, as we were saying, you're also a teacher. Where do you find enough time in the day to do all that you do?
Well, you got to have some good time management. And I have to say that I have incredible volunteers. Our board is fantastic. We are all 100% volunteer. Everything goes back to our mission. And we do have a volunteer group on Facebook. Unfortunately, we can't really use them much with the pandemic right now, but it's 200 strong. And so a lot of the jobs, I get a lot of help and assistance, but I'm a busybody. I'm much like a bee. I like to be busy. So, you find the time. If it's important enough, you definitely can find the time for it.
So have you found that the interest in bees has grown over the past year or so?
Oh, totally. I kind of joke with people that I feel bees have become the new panda. I'm sure you remember about a decade ago, the pandas numbers were really declining, and the World Wildlife Federation started a real campaign, even made the panda their logo, and it worked. I mean, the panda populations are much stronger, and I kind of now feel like the bees are the ones that people are like, we've got to help our bees. And more people are getting educated about our food industry and where our food comes from. And that's super important. And they're realizing that the diversity of food that we have is because of our pollinators.
It really is fascinating when we break it down to the beginning. Although I have to say, I think a panda is so much cuter than a bee.
I probably would have said that quite a few years ago now, but just being with bees all the time, there is something magical and special about them. And they are even cute. If you look at them up close, their little fuzzy bodies.
So with that, how do you think the vaccine is going to help your organization and other nonprofits such as yours? Do you think it's going to be open up the doors to allow people to come back and to experience the beehives and some of the other events that you used to do in person?
Yeah, we're definitely hopeful that hopefully it will start to put this pandemic a little bit more behind us, that people will feel comfortable going out to events again, and it will be safe to go out to events again. Because there is nothing like taking a tour in the hives. It is truly it's magical. I can't even describe it. And people that have done it have walked away feeling that, because every sense is tickled when you go in a hive. I mean, your eyes just can't. There's so much activity going on. The smell of the hive, the sound of the buzzing. It really is fantastic. And of course, you have to take a taste of the honey. So there's another sense that is a part of it. So it really, it's an experience like no other. I call it my yoga. It calms me down. I get to be part of a world that I feel like I'm a guest. I have to be very respectful, and it slows me down. You can see I'm kind of hyper like my fifth graders that I teach. And the beehives are they just kind of like allow me to kind of just take a deep breath and just enjoy the process.
I love your enthusiasm, but when I think of going into a beehive, I don't think about being calm in yoga. It's panic. Panic is what is going through my mind.
And I think that's why I love doing the tours, because doing it virtually, you can see the activity, but when you are actually suited up and going in a hive, all of a sudden you realize, wow, like this is nothing like I imagined. The bees continue to do what they do. They don't even mind that you're there. It's almost like you're a, for lack of a better term, a fly or a bee on the wall. And you are just watching this process because they sense that you are not there to harm or hurt them. But if you were like going in there really roughly, then they may sense that. Just like if someone came in your house and started tearing it apart, of course, you're going to get defensive as well. But if you are gentle and they know that you are there just to take a look at the magical world that they're a part of, that's why I love the hive tours, because I love talking to people and asking what they're feeling before they go in the hive, and then talking to them after the hive. And it's just remarkable. And getting to have that experience with children too, like at the downtown boxing gym where we have hives, to just see that level of anxiety and fear start to dissipate is just so magical.
It's been great having you with us. Quickly, before we let you go, though, do you want to touch on you're back in the classroom teaching? How is that world going for you right now?
You know, just like the bees, these kids are incredible. They're remarkable. And I am so fortunate to have a supportive district, supportive kids, supportive parents. And we're just exploring this new world of education together. And it has its difficulties, but it has its it's kind of how you look at things. You know, you could look at it as this is just awful, or you could just go with it. And I'm fortunate that I have kids that we try to have as much fun as we can. And we're eager to get back in person. Hopefully even, this school year it will happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And with that, do you anticipate that you're going to be able to open up bees to the D to the public soon again?
I hope so, but people and their safety is most important to us. And we can educate from afar and still continue our mission in a safe manner. But we're hoping that maybe this summer with, the vaccine and people doing their part to stay safe, that maybe we'll get to a point that we can actually do some events. They might look a little different. It might be smaller groups. But hopefully it will happen. And right now the bees are all huddled up in their cluster in the hive, so we wouldn't go into the hives anyways right now.
Well, I look forward to when you guys do open back up, because I'm going to experience it one day. As you said, I'm going to put it on my bucket list.
We're going to get you suited up and you will go in the hive, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts afterwards.
Brian, quickly, if people want to support your organization, how can they do that?
We're online at beesandthed.com. Our store is also there. You can purchase our honey. We do have our honey available in many different locations now. They're all listed on our webpage. Or you can donate. There's a donate button there. Or, just come to some of our online things and then spread the word, because that's what it's all about.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. We know that you're in a little bit of a break while your kids are off to remote gym class. So we do appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you letting me come back, and I look forward to coming back again, maybe in person next time.
Oh my gosh, that would be so nice, wouldn't it?
I hope so.
Brian Peterson with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. He is the founder of Bees in the D. Your enthusiasm is very infectious, and we want to say thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you for all that you do as well, educating us from your platform as well.